Well, the B team was set up about 3 years ago, really in response to a growing need for business to take responsibility for its actions. You know, there's just an increasing need for business to step up and recognise that it's creating impacts on the planet and impacts on people that it's often unintended, but there are direct impacts that need to be addressed. So there's a growing awareness of the negative impacts of business. It's been a very positive force over the last several decades in terms of bringing people out of poverty and increasing global wealth, but it's also had a lot of unintended consequences. So the B team was set up really to recognise that there is a responsibility for business to be part of the solution and not just be part of the problem. A second reason is a recognition that many of the big global problems in the world actually can't be solved without business being part of it. And there's no institution better to harness the resources to solve global issues than actually the private sector. We have to shift the entire global energy system off fossil fuels to clean energy. And it's a massive reinvestment, but it requires business to lead that. I mean, ultimately, of course, we need policy change, we need governments to support it. And that's why it is a partnership between governments and business. We found with the Paris Agreement that probably the biggest contributor in the end after 21 years of negotiations, that finally business came to the table to put the pressure on governments to come up with a bold and ambitious agreement. What's good news is there's enormous opportunities arising out of it. There's real prosperity, there's real wealth. What's critical is that wealth is shared fairly. What we can't afford to do is have an economic transformation where the wealth concentrates, as we found in the last 20, 30 years, in the hands of few and at the expense of global equality. So Abraaj is obviously very strong in the developing markets, so Latin America, Africa, Turkey and South and Southeast Asia. And for the B team, they're critical markets. They're critical markets for the transformation of their energy systems, actually increasing electricity and power to regional communities. They're critical for a broader perspective about biodiversity. You know, the B team's agenda is much wider than climate. It's all about big global issues where business can be a participant to solve the problems. Ultimately, private equity is buying businesses. They've got a longer term time frame than many investors in the public markets because they hold for up to 10 to 14 years. And then ultimately they typically sell the businesses. So when you can transform a business under private ownership, away from the glare of public owners, public investors, you can actually transform businesses much more effectively.